Hello and happy almost New Year. I am Mikah Sargent, and Jason Howell and I have put together the best interviews of the year for Tech News Weekly. We have got a lot to talk about, including, anybody remember Lawyer Cat? How about that whole Peloton issue with its treadmills, or finding a job with TikTok, and quite a number of interesting Amazon surveillance products. It's all of that and so much more in our Best Ofs episode for the year. Stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 215, recorded December 9th for Thursday, December 30th, 2021. This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Imperfect Foods. Imperfect Foods is catching the food that's falling through the cracks of our food system by sourcing quirky yet delicious foods. Right now, Imperfect Foods is offering our listeners 20% off your first 4 orders when you go to imperfectfoods.com and use promo code TNW. And by ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN is an app that reroutes your internet connection through their secure servers so your ISP can't see the sites you visit. For 3 extra months free with a 1-year package, go to expressvpn.com/TNW. And by Melissa. The U.S. Postal Service processes more than 98,000 address changes daily. Is your customer contact data up to date? Try Melissa's APIs in the developer portal. It's easy to log on, sign up, and start playing in the API sandbox 24/7. Get started today with 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/twit.
Hello and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. And this time we're talking about the people making and breaking the tech news. I am one of your hosts, Mikah Sargent.
And I'm the other guy, Jason Howell, trying to figure this out. Okay, we're talking about them. Yes, okay, that works. All right.
Good. This is our Best Ofs episode. That's what you should understand. These are the best interviews that we got to see this year, that we got to partake in this year, that we got to ask and have answers given to us this year. And we've got quite a few lined up for you here. The first one, feels a little. Sorry, the cat. The cat is.
Are you a cat? Are you a cat, Mikah?
Your Honor, I am not a cat, but a lawyer earlier this year did become a cat and wasn't sure how to stop being a cat in the middle of a courtroom discussion. So check out our interview with Thomas Smith from Debugger about just that very thing.
All right, tell me how I can become a cat.
So... Excuse me, you have to use one of the 3 wishes granted to you by a genie to become a cat. But if you would like to, if you'd like to temporarily appear as a cat, there's a filter for that, sort of. Folks, if you had heard about the Texas lawyer who had to tell the judge, I am not a cat. It was all over Twitter, and I think in many other places. Yeah, and reminiscent of the time that the Zoom dad had his kids marching into the room behind him. Then you probably know about this adorable little kitten that seemed to be just incredibly elusive. So who better? Who better a super sleuth than the one and only Thomas Smith writing over at Debugger to track down this kitten and explain how you too can be part of the fun, but more importantly, how you can turn the daggone thing off after you're done with it. Welcome back to the show, Thomas Smith. We are happy to have you here with us.
Thanks for having me back. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, so there was a kitten, and folks were looking for it in all sorts of places. And you have this great article kind of walking through your own investigation to track down where in the world this kitten came from. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey and where you eventually discovered the cat?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, as soon as I saw this trending on Twitter, I knew this was something Debugger was going to be all over. This is kind of right in our wheelhouse. And sure enough, within maybe an hour or two after this started to trend, I got a message from my editor saying, can you track down what was used for this, what happened here? And by the way, we need a draft in an hour. So it became this sort of all hands on deck, the whole team, 2 different editors. We were all working together, trying to figure out what had created this incredible Zoom fail. And we figured out that, it was some kind of a filter. It wasn't a filter directly in Zoom. There are filters in Zoom. Our initial suspicion was a separate program called Snap Camera that lets you put Snapchat filters on your Zoom calls, but we couldn't find the exact one. So we created a tutorial about how you can become a lawyer cat, but not necessarily the lawyer cat. And at the last minute, we found this old post on archive.org, the Internet Archive, pulling up a blog post from, I think, 2012 from a chemistry professor that had been on a job interview when he suddenly transformed into the exact same cat that we saw, with Lawyer Cat. And so we put that in the story and said, well, this is our best guess as to how this happened. We have no idea the story behind it. And here's how you can kind of duplicate the same effect with Snap Camera. That was really popular. We got a lot of people really excited about it. But, personally, I didn't really want to stop there. I wanted to delve into it and figure out exactly what had happened. So I started to do more research. I looked at what technologies the professor had used, or potential professor who didn't end up getting the job, maybe as a result of becoming a cat, and found out that he had an old Dell computer, and he had been using a program called Dell Webcam Central. So maybe at about 6 o'clock the next morning, I went in my office, and I'm one of those people that never throws tech stuff away. So I have a bin in my office that's literally labeled archived tech, and it's just all my old cell phones and laptops and stuff. And I found a Dell Inspiron laptop from, I think, 2009, ultimately. I found this from 2009. And, battery was totally dead. I had tried to dual boot Linux on it at one point. So I had to, get it plugged into the wall, bypass my dual booted Linux OS, get back into the original Windows 7. Searched, found that it did have Dell Webcam Central, pulled it up. I went over to the avatars screen, which is what they called this. And sure enough, there it was. It was one of those sort of amazing moments where I clicked it, and there I was, transformed into the exact lawyer cat that we saw in the Zoom video.
Incredible. So this was very old tech. And that then leaves you wondering, was the lawyer using... Because that's such an old machine that you had to find. Was the lawyer using an old machine, or did they somehow figure out how to bring this tech onto a more modern machine that worked for it? This is also interesting.
Yeah, well, so Rachel Metz at CNN was also covering the story. Again, we had a lot of great journalistic minds, working together on this. And as I've said in my story, I fully expect the Pulitzer Committee is going to be calling at some point. But we were all sort of working on this, and she took the approach of going directly to the source. And in her story that came out yesterday, she actually did an interview with Mr. Ponton, the attorney who was affected here. And he said that in that story that he did have an old Dell computer. He had actually driven, I think, across Texas to use his assistant's computer. And it was likely an old Dell. And what I found in delving into this a bit more is that with really old Dell computers like my laptop and certain Dell monitors with an integrated webcam, this actually serves not only as your webcam software, but also as the driver for the webcam itself. So if you put this avatar on, or you mistakenly, switch it on, it actually seems to apply the effect at the level of the driver. So the video feed that it's handing off to Zoom or to another platform is actually passing through this filter at such a low level that it's not like you can go into Zoom and press a button and switch it off. It kind of becomes your webcam feed. So as much as people were saying, why didn't he know how to switch this off? And, he must not have known how to use the tech. I think if I was appearing in court and this suddenly happened to me, I wouldn't think, oh gosh, it's my, my ancient webcam integrated into my monitor. The driver for it has this weird avatar, it's built into its program. I better go in there and disable it. And the other thing that I found in starting to do this more and more, and actually have the laptop with, I don't know if it'll fit in the screen here, but I've got Lawyer Cat here. I just leave it open now, and it kind of does that over in my office. But one thing I found is that it's almost impossible to switch the filter back off. There's no clear off button. You have to go into a different menu and then select a different setting in order to switch Lawyer Cat off once you've enabled it. So it doesn't surprise me that he had it on for so long. It actually surprises me that he only had it on for 45 seconds, because I know it took me probably a solid 2 minutes to figure out how to switch this thing off.
Yeah, that's troubling, especially when you're trying to have a very serious conversation with your lawyer. I wonder I wonder the age of the assistant that he had to go to, because again, it's a fascinating thinking about a filter that's that long ago, had to go to that computer to get it set up, and if it was something that got turned on so easily, and as you point out, difficult to turn off once it's turned on, which a lot of these modern technologies don't do. But let's talk a little bit about kind of etiquette in general, because I do think, and I'm curious, as you have lived through this pandemic as well, if you have seen the etiquette of these online calls kind of change over time, where at first we were all, suit and tie and everything in the shot was perfect. And then I don't know about you, but I've seen, colleagues kind of get a little bit more, some of them were comfortable from the get-go, but some more of them getting more comfortable as time goes on, and displaying little faults in the, in the ether, as it were, where there's stuff in the shot and it's not as important. Do you think that human empathy is forgiving in this sense, where you made the joke about the professor maybe not getting the role? The lawyer and the judge, they seemed to, at least at first, kind of just roll with the punches. Do you think that that's a normal thing these days?
Yeah, one of my favorite parts of the video is where he says, I can just proceed like this. Like he's ready to testify in court. They're probably under oath as a cat if they need to do that. And I think that, that highlights one of the things that's so great about the video. And one of the things that makes it so funny is that they just keep going. They're trying to be unfazed by this. And, in one of the interviews with the judge who was presiding there, he said that, he really had a lot of respect for how everybody involved kind of preserved the dignity of the court, despite the fact that this cat had shown up. And, they didn't just start cracking up or anything. They just really kind of kept going with it. And I think that highlights that, even if you're in a virtual space, it's more about the behaviors when you're there. If you're in a physical courtroom, there's nothing about that room that makes it special. It's the way that people behave there. And likewise with a Zoom courtroom, people treated the situation with a lot of dignity, even though it was just such a bizarre thing to have happen. And I think that's, overall reflective of the fact that these virtual spaces that we're in are similar to physical spaces in a lot of ways, and that it's more about how we behave when we're there than it is about, whether we're a cat or what the space looks like. So I think that's interesting. I think also that, also part of why it was so funny, because they were just so completely serious for the whole thing. I think, one thing I've noticed as a trend over the course of the pandemic is that in the beginning, we saw a lot more, backgrounds, virtual backgrounds, people applying like beauty filters that would, kind of filter out and straighten up your face. And I've seen that really change a lot. I was one of the people with all of these Zoom backgrounds in the beginning, and I would choose different backgrounds depending on the call I was on. And now you can see I've just got, my room in the background. And I've seen that happen a lot more, where people have moved from kind of trying to create an impression that they're still in an office, or, putting the Golden Gate Bridge behind themselves, to just being willing to show, what their lives are actually like. And I think people are more tolerant of that. It's a big part of why a lot of people feel more comfortable doing it.
Makes sense. Well, Thomas Smith, I want to thank you so much for doing this research for us. Very important work being done, and we appreciate that. We appreciate you sharing it with us. If folks want to follow you online, where can they go to do that?
Well, you can read both stories at debugger.medium.com, and you can always follow me at TomSmith585 on Twitter.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We appreciate having you back.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Goldeneye 007. Man, I loved that game back on the Nintendo 64. And I mean, it was a genre-defining game when it launched on the 64 back in 1997. Here we are nearly, not quite, but almost 25 years later, and Sam Machkovech from Ars Technica is perhaps more excited about it now than maybe you were back then. I don't know. What do you think, Sam? More excitement now?
Well, it's an interesting time. Hi, everybody. Good to see y'all.
Hi.
Hello. What happened is GoldenEye 007 was one of these video games that never came back officially as the old N64 game. Now, Bond video games have been coming out ever since, and that was one of the first big ones. It sold. Yeah. It was the second highest selling N64 game in the entire world, just beneath Mario Kart, which says a lot about how big it was back in the 90s. And then a bunch of other games from other companies came out. Nintendo and Rare never made another Bond game, and all of the other Bond games never quite lived up to it. And then this one, GoldenEye, which people have kind of clamored for in the remaster and remake world, hasn't happened. You know, if you grab the newest PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X, you'll find remakes and retunings of older games all over the place. But GoldenEye never got it. Turns out Microsoft, who bought the company Rare years ago, tried to make GoldenEye 007 as a sort of HD remaster, and they made it. And then they shelved it. They either canceled it or put it away, but somebody went to the trouble of getting the entire N64 game redone to look better on HD TVs, and then just canceled it. Now, fast forward 14 years later, that was back in 2007, and we started hearing teases and started seeing little images and started hearing things that it might be coming back. And sure enough, just about maybe 36 hours ago, I got a nudge from a video game sort of deep throat saying, you didn't hear it from me, but certain files appeared. And sure enough, I now am in possession of GoldenEye 007 as remade for Xbox 360. It gets up to 1080p or even actually 4K if you use an emulator. It replays all of the old games identically, but every single thing top to bottom has been touched up to look better than how things looked on the N64. Your memories of the N64 are not the same as how it actually looked. It doesn't look great, but all of the touch-ups have been done in a really interesting way. And the most interesting thing is, like a couple of other remakes, there's a button you can tap at any time to turn the game from old graphics to new and back. So if you think, oh, this remake doesn't look that good, then you can tap a button to see exactly how the old graphics look. And if you're watching the video version of this, you'll see a preview where some of the images go back and forth between new and then old. That's how it goes in order. It's new and then old. And so you'll see all of these touch-ups to the characters' faces, to the textures around. But most importantly, it actually runs at a steady frame rate. If you ever played it on N64, split screen was a big deal on N64. There was split screen gaming just wasn't a thing until the N64 had 4 controller ports. So when 4 people got together in a dorm or on a couch to play GoldenEye, the game would just slow down. Like if you threw a single grenade and there was an explosion, the game ran at maybe 12 frames a second. So now that's over with. Higher fidelity, everything works. So it's this incredible thing, and it leads to the question that you should probably ask, which is, what the heck happened? How did this game get lost after 14 years?
So Sam, I've got a question.
Okay.
What the heck happened? How did this game get lost for 14 years, Sam?
You know, I'm glad you asked. I have to stop talking every once in a while. You know, I get excited about this stuff.
I know how you roll.
But here's the thing. So there are certain viewers who probably have no idea about this game. It's from a certain boomer era. And now you might think, well, who gives a crap? But right around 2007, this was still a good time where people who had bought the N64 might be, getting a new system for their kids. Maybe they're getting the Xbox. So Microsoft owned Rare, and Rare was the company that made GoldenEye. They also made Donkey Kong Country and Killer Instinct and a bunch of other big Nintendo games. But Microsoft acquired Rare. So that was one kind of juggle was, well, Microsoft has a piece of the GoldenEye pie. Nintendo has another piece of the GoldenEye pie. So then you have to add, well, there's Activision. Activision started releasing 007 games. So they had a piece of the 007 pie. And then there was MGM and then the rights holders to Bond itself, EOM. So they all had a slice of the pie. So what happened was Microsoft just decided let's just make it, and it'll be so good that everyone will say, yes, let's print money and shake hands. And they went and they made a completely finished working game. And then somebody at the negotiating table said no. Phil Spencer, who's the chief of Xbox these days, has put out public statements simply saying the issue is rights, not game development. But that was before this leak. So the idea being the game could have been made, but somebody in the rights holding process held it up. And the rumor has long been that the Bond license holders have said games have to run in certain ways. Number one, they have to have the current Bond, meaning a new GoldenEye 007 can't rewind to Pierce Brosnan. They would have to put Daniel Craig in or someone else. And in fact, we had a GoldenEye 007 remake for the Nintendo Wii, which was not. It was a completely different game. It had Daniel Craig in it, and it wasn't as good. Not because of Daniel Craig. I'm not trying to be a Bond actor bias. But there were also other rules about violence, about whether you could fight other heroes, and split screen wouldn't work because it's all of the heroes fighting each other. You could choose which of your favorite Bonds, and then you and your friends pit each other in that way. So no one ever got official confirmation, but I've heard rumors all over the place about it. The thing is, someone leaked a giant video from that was filmed in about 2015. That sort of hinted to this possibly coming out for a anthology of rares called Rare Replay. Well, it didn't happen, but someone made this mini documentary that's about 30 minutes about all these different people who worked on GoldenEye talking about how it got made, how Nintendo needed to be convinced, how the MGM people needed to be convinced, and how it sold like gangbusters anyway. It's a fascinating interview, and if you go to archive.org, you'll find this interview there. Nobody's deleted it, so I guess they're all cool with it. But that was the last big hint, and then these files started circulating. And I know I've been babbling a lot, but the long story short is there's a whole file trading system from the old Xbox 360. This was how people could beta test and then trade each other's files. So if I needed to have a tester get a file, but they needed to do it at home, they could just use this thing called PartnerNet and get the files. Well, that's how this game leaked. It was on PartnerNet for 1 hour and then gone. So someone downloaded it during that 1 hour span in 2007 and sat on it like an egg until this week.
So it appeared on there. I'm trying to understand how that suddenly happens for an hour. It sounds like it's probably a mistake then, right? It was accidentally served. I think
somebody just decided at Rare, like, we need to beta test this. So here I'm going to put it up. But the thing about that service was you didn't need passwords. You could just get files. It was one of the most insecure beta testing file trading things ever. I mean, 2007 was a different time for InfoSec. So
sure.
And for that 1 hour where they're like, okay, grab the file and then I'll cut it off, other people who weren't supposed to see it got it.
Well, and what's impressive about that is that was 2007 that file, kind of leaked out. And here we are, how many years later, it took this long for this to make it even further than that. So whoever ended up with it, either wisely or not, I don't know. I don't know what you could do with that file. It's not like a rare to find, no pun intended, a rare to find like physical arcade game that has some value. It's just a file. Eventually it's going to make its way out, I would imagine, and here we are.
If you're the one, I mean, it's almost like its own 007 movie. You're the one person who grabbed a file that has a lot of value and could unlock certain doors, figuratively or maybe literally. I don't know. But that was, if you go to weird nerd chatter sites, particularly the dark areas of 4chan, you'll see people complain and talk about the bartering of these files. Someone actually put out a zip file a month ago with a 100-character zip code password. Excuse me. It was a 100-character password, and the leak was, "You'll never crack this password. Good luck." And everyone's like, what is going on? It was a very weird chapter in the story that we all get to ignore now because the files have just leaked. I will not tell you where to find them, but if you read my coverage at Ars Technica, you will see enough hints where you might be able to find the files at a not password protected public site out there on the internet.
There's enough details in there that someone could actually figure it out if they really wanted to. I mean, and that's actually a good question to ask. A little bit about the ethics involved in this. Well, it wasn't very long ago. I'm trying to remember exactly. I forget the details, where there was this large cache of like Nintendo rarities that suddenly hit. The Giga Leak. That's right. And so the ethical, quandary around that being like, okay, it's great that all of these things that we've heard about for so long are finally out in the public, but what about the person who doesn't want that to be public? Like, what are the ethics around that?
And
where do you stand on that?
Question. That's a great question because it really, in my opinion, depends on the flavor of what's getting out there. In the case of the GigaLeak, those were meant to be confidential pre-release kind of things. For example, stuff from one game that wound up in another game. So this was sort of test footage for something and it didn't quite work. And so Nintendo sat on it for years and then paid it forward to another game. That's interesting from a historical perspective, but may not necessarily be the same thing. That to me is not the same as saying, here's a game that got finished and then no one was letting us buy it. Because if someone said, hey, Sam, here's Goldeneye, and you have to pay extra because MGM wants the rights and Nintendo wants the rights and so on and so forth, I would say, okay, I'm willing to pay that money because this is interesting to me. It's a really well-made game, by the way. I haven't even talked about what it's like to play. I'm playing it on an emulator on Windows 10. It runs swimmingly, and I can actually dump the files on what's known as a debug Xbox 360, which I happen to have one of those, which testers and journalists used back in the aughts and early teens. It runs great. And I just play this and I go, I want this. I want to do 4-player local at my house. I want to be able to play it online through Xbox Live and all that stuff. I can't. And so in this case, the ethics of it are, well, I want it really bad. And that's not necessarily a high watermark to clear for like why this should happen. But also, it's not being sold. Like the money is not exchanging hands. It is a certain theft, but at least it's not piracy theft where someone's like selling this as a burnt CD in an alleyway saying, do you want some Goldeneye? You know, that would be pushing it a little harder on a judicial or court level. So in that respect, I don't have a good answer to it because my GoldenEye bias is pretty intense. There's actually a game that came out after GoldenEye. It's called Perfect Dark. It didn't do as well. It was also Nintendo and Rare. It was made for the N64. Very similar. And people think, well, why don't you just play Perfect Dark? They re-released that for Xbox 360. It works on Xbox One. It's only $20, or it's even less if you get like an anthology package. It has the same sort of split screen and spy video gaming and blah, blah, blah. And the answer, you end up with things like, well, I like Big Head cheat mode. I like paintball gun mode. I like Odd Job as the tiny guy who runs around in the multiplayer arena. I like the original levels where you were using Bond gadgets and Bond movie locations to get through. There's just a mystique that GoldenEye 007 has for those very specific things, but it was also just a game of its era that was unlike anything else. You look at it now and you're like, well, it's kind of meh compared to modern shooters. But at the time, the idea that you didn't just rush straight ahead, kill things, and find the final door was very interesting. You had objectives. You had to feel like a spy. You had to use gadgets. And it really was compelling. Plus, you needed like $1,000 computer to play anything comparable at the time compared to a $200 N64. There was just a lot that it did very early that still, in my opinion, holds up. And that's what's been fascinating for me, is replaying this on an Xbox 360 emulator and saying, yeah, this is still pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I'm super compelled to check this out someday. Maybe I'll put a question mark on that. I would love to play it though at some point because I really was such a huge fan of that game back in the 64. So I'm happy you were able to write all about it and share what you discovered. Sam Machkovech writes for Ars Technica. If people don't want to follow you online, where can they find you?
Well, head over to @SamRed on the Twitters. But also, really, if you're not into piracy or if the ethics of it make you feel sketchy, go to arstechnica.com, look up our GoldenEye coverage. You get to see a lot of images and video of what could have been on retail. There's a guy out of Spain who found it a couple days before I did and uploaded a really long video of it. It's very complete. So if you can't play it, it's still, you get to experience it. So definitely go check that out. Jason, it's always good to talk to you all at Twit, and I'll see y'all soon.
Sounds good, Sam. Take care of yourself. We'll see you soon. Going to take a quick break and thank the sponsor of this episode of Tech News Weekly, and that is Imperfect Foods. How about a 3-for-1 New Year's resolution? Reduce food waste, save time on grocery shopping, and eat more fresh and delicious food. Think it's too good to be true? Well, think again and try Imperfect Foods. Here's a cringeworthy stat to start 2022. Every year, 35% of the food supply goes unsold or uneaten in the U.S. Imperfect Foods is working to turn this around by sourcing foods that would otherwise fall through the cracks of our food system. So combating climate change, that might feel big. It might feel overwhelming. What could one person possibly do And actually, it's easy and it's delicious. It's a way to make an impact. That's Imperfect Foods. Imperfect Foods is a grocery delivery service offering an entire line of sustainable groceries that taste delicious and reduce waste just by embracing the natural imperfections in food. Visit imperfectfoods.com and you can see if they deliver to your area. Once you sign up, you can personalize your weekly grocery order with fresh seasonal produce, pantry staples, yummy snacks, plus your order is going to arrive on the same day every week. That makes it easy to build a stress-free routine. Make it easy for you to fill out your your recipe list for every week. On average, Imperfect Foods customers save 6 to 8 pounds of food with every order. And unlike on-demand delivery companies, Imperfect Foods delivers weekly by neighborhood, a unique model that actually produces 25 to 75% fewer emissions than individual trips to the grocery store. And that makes a lot of sense. Plus, say goodbye to packaging guilt. Imperfect Foods is the only national grocery delivery company that makes it easy to return your packaging after every order. I've tried Imperfect Foods. We've got Imperfect Foods down in our fridge right now. We've been eating them. I was actually really delighted by this bag of treats. It was like chocolate-covered pretzels sprinkled with candy cane crumbs. So delicious. So you got to check out their food. It's really yummy. Right now, Imperfect Foods is offering our listeners 20% off your first 4 orders when you go to imperfectfoods.com. Make sure and use promo code TNW. Again, 20% off your first 4 orders. That's up to an $80 value at imperfectfoods.com when you use promo code TNW. Join the movement at imperfectfoods.com, promo code TNW.
All right. So you may have heard a thing or two about a company called Peloton. Peloton is a fitness company that makes fitness machines. And a lot of people who really love their Pelotons and love to talk about their Pelotons. But there was an issue with a more recent addition to the lineup, a Peloton treadmill. And because of some problems with the system, unfortunately, there were deaths and injuries that resulted from the Peloton treadmill. And that resulted in a conversation between Peloton and the bureau in charge of safety and trying to recall this device. And it got pretty messy. And then Peloton did something else. Joining us today to talk about that something else. And I think about sort of services and machines and things having pay-as-you-go subscriptions is the executive director of the Rebellion Pack. It's Brianna Wu. Welcome to this show for the first time. Welcome back to Twitch,
Micah,
it's
so good to see you. How are you doing?
I am hanging in there in fiery California. I love your
background. It's so colorful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, I have to admit, I'm one of these people that adores their Peloton. I am part of the cult. They give you a robe and a mask. It's a whole initiation ritual. We can't get into that. But I found myself in the middle of this controversy, really, because I was one of the people that brought it to light. So do you just want me to explain it from the beginning to your listeners? Do you want to get back to it? How do you want to tell this story?
That would be great. So talk about your experience with it for sure. And as you said, we'll leave off the robe and the mask, but the rest of it, we'd love to hear.
I'll go put it on if I need to. So as you said, this situation with the Peloton tread was very, very serious. And a critique that we had of Peloton tread and Peloton in general of it was their I think it's fair to say a bit of an evasive response to it. They weren't really stand up in communicating with people about this flaw. And to be really clear to your listeners, they agreed to a voluntary recall. I do believe that they're sending people out to tread owners' houses if they don't want a full refund, and they're modifying the treadmill to make it safe, and they're adding a Peloton lock to it, which is a combination code that you have to use to activate it. So that's kind of been the state of things. Peloton, the forum on Facebook, really caught on fire on Monday because a woman that owned a tread was writing that she had been completely locked out of her Peloton. She could not use her $4,500 treadmill at all. And what had happened was Peloton had patched her treadmill without her permission to lock her out and said, hey, you don't currently have a subscription. So even though you've had this ability to use your $4,500 treadmill as just a treadmill, we are going to lock you out of that from now on and not let you do that. But good news, we're going to give you 3 free months of our $40 a month service. So you'll get 3 free months, and then to use your $4,500 device, you'll just have to pay us $40 a month. I mean, how does that seem to you, Micah? That seems a little shady personally to me.
Yeah, and can I get some clarification on the?
Yes, please.
Is you mentioned that they would come and they would update the software and it would do a pin. You'd be able to use a pin to turn it on. Right. Is the pin tied to that subscription service, or can you have that independently?
So that's actually a very perceptive question, because that seems to be the issue at hand, that you can enter in your PIN only for the live classes, or you can only set that feature up if you have an active membership. You cannot do that if you don't have an active membership, which I find very sketchy, because they had no ethical problem, patching this woman's device without her permission to lock her out. And, this is just the Android SDK, so it doesn't really seem like a heavy lift to just, put that on both sides of it. So I had a tweet that went fairly viral. I have to tell you, it's a wonderful day for a woman to go viral on Reddit and to have all the comments be positive and supporting her. That happened to me, which was amazing. Yes. People really not liking this situation, because it looks, I don't want to, ascribe motivation to Peloton, but it certainly looks like they're using the death of a child to basically charge you to use your own device. I mean, does that make sense to you?
That's exactly what it feels. Once you clarified that point, that's exactly what it feels like. It sounds like you're saying that in order to have the ultimate safety, you need to subscribe to the service.
Exactly.
That's not a good look.
Right. So I'm going to actually break some news today on your show. This has not been reported. I want to kind of tell you the blow-by-blow of the drama about how Peloton was forced to address this week. So this story started blowing up on Monday after I had a tweet that went fairly viral about it. I do believe Business Insider was the first journalistic organization to look into it and to write a story. Micah, they flat out asked Peloton, will you commit to sometime in the future making it so people can use the Just Run feature even without a subscription? Because what Peloton had done is they'd used this kind of marketing politician language that people just hate, where you're not saying anything that's not true, but you're crafting it to be deliberately misleading, because they're using phrases like, at this time, you can't use this feature. Currently, for the time being, making it sound like this feature was going to come and they were going to reinstate your ability to use your treadmill to just run. You had journalists, very good journalists, that asked them directly, will you commit to actively letting us use our devices we paid for without a subscription? Peloton would not comment on this on Monday. They would not comment on this on Tuesday to PC Magazine. The Verge got involved. Vox Media, they did a story. And in late Tuesday night, Peloton wrote those reporters to update the story and said, you know what? We will actually answer your question now. We will commit to changing this in the future to let you do that. So I really want to give people online credit. Your pressure on Peloton, your frustration in calling this out, I believe is why we kind of pushed back on this really exploitive model, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously it's hard to read behind the between the lines rather, or kind of suss out what's going on here. I am just kind of flabbergasted. What is the benefit? What do you think the thinking was for Peloton in terms of not just doing this? Why, especially you talked about, not super heavy lifting, given that it's the Android SDK, that it is that, someone died. And so doing anything you can to try and go to help with that would be good. And also the fact that they were facing a recall. What do you think was the thinking for even holding out at all on this? Is this just a company that its culture is what's going on here? I guess is the question I am asking.
I think that's such a perceptive question, Mikah. This is my theory, and this is what a lot of people on Reddit particularly said. I want to be very clear. This is my speculation. I don't have any evidence of this, but this is what makes sense to me. I think many of us with careers have been in situations where our lawyers have advised us that certain things are legally safest to do, right? And what happens when you sign the Peloton membership, there's a clause in there that people on Reddit found that said, if I continue using this treadmill, I indemnify Peloton from legal action. I believe it agrees to arbitration, or it indemnifies them completely. It basically gives them a legal out. So I believe that if you have no subscription with them, you're not currently in any kind of legal arrangement with Peloton. You've just agreed to use this device. So I don't think this was the software team not implementing this feature. I think what makes sense to me is, it's under a voluntary recall, and the lawyers got involved. And the lawyers said it would be safest for us, and it would expose us to the least amount of liability if you just locked people out of this entirely, which I have to say, if that is true, it's really gross, because if you read their press statement, they're saying, oh, this is for the children. This is for safety. And I just personally don't find that credible. If this was really about safety, they would make adding that to the Just Run feature a development priority.
I agree 100%. This, of course, is one of the more, I think, egregious examples of a subscription kind of playing against what the market wants, what consumers want. But I wanted to talk to you briefly, given your vast knowledge of kind of the, now I can't even think of the word, but the sort of legal side, the public policy side of things with companies. So Sonos is one example where at one point, Sonos speakers, they had set it up to where they weren't going to be supporting the original Sonos speakers anymore. And they put in place this policy where the speakers ended up getting kind of shut down completely. And they did roll back on that after some public pressure. Another company that I'm familiar with is the Wink Home Hub. It was a home hub that had like a Zigbee radio in it and a Z-Wave radio in it and all these different things that would let people connect all of their smart home devices. They introduced a subscription after they charged for the bridge originally as the only cost. And then when they introduced a subscription, consumers were not happy about it. And now Wink is all but kaput. And so I'm curious kind of from your side of things, there's always this undertow of people reminding us time and time again that we don't own the devices that we have purchased. Exactly. And I just am curious about your thoughts on that when it comes to software versus hardware and these devices that we bring into our homes. Do you feel more toward the side of things where we own our devices and get to do with them what we choose? Or is there some understanding, given that you are a developer as well, of that kind of not owning the software side?
Well, I think it depends. I think generally speaking, if you're providing a service, I think Peloton, their live classes, I can personally tell you it's more than worth $40 a month to me, right? I had reconstructive knee surgery this year. It was incredibly helpful for me coming back from that and getting back to health. I don't think anyone is expecting Peloton to provide these classes for free. I do think it's true that compared to other countries, the United States has very lax consumer protections. And I think that all things being equal, I think we find ourselves owning the things we buy less and less and falling into exploitive pricing models more and more. And Mikah, something I would really love to talk to you about with this is the Peloton community's response. And like I said at the beginning, I'm a member of this cult. I love my Peloton dearly. I use it every day. But if you look at the comments of the community here, it's very similar to we both love Apple. It's kind of similar to the Apple community, which will instinctually defend everything that Apple does. Yeah. And I've thought so much about this. Why is this that the Peloton community is clamoring for Peloton to really push this pricing model I find abusive forward? And I think what it is both of us have podcast shows. We both run into people that feel like they know us because they listen to us every week. Mm-hmm. Yes. I think that because you spend so much time interacting with their wonderful instructors, I think some of us feel that if you're insulting Peloton, you're like insulting our friend, right? Yeah, and it's not Olivia Amato that stayed up late coding this feature. It's the Peloton dev team and the Peloton legal team. And I think it's really important that, if we truly want things like Apple, Android, Microsoft, Peloton, if we want them to succeed, we need to be able to have space to reasonably criticize decisions that they make. Because if we're not, the question is if people 5 years from now are going to find Peloton to be a good value. Because $40 a month is a lot of money. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Brianna, that was an incredibly insightful observation there regarding, because when you look at it that way, these instructors that you feel like you have a personal connection to and who you feel are also helping you day in, day out, you feel like they're on the line. That I didn't think about it that way. So it's really nice to have that look of things. Absolutely. I wish we had more time to chat. Unfortunately, I am going to have to say goodbye, but I want to thank you for joining us today for Tech News Weekly for the first time. And of course, folks can check out your great work with the Rebellion Pack. But if folks want to follow you online and maybe come across your next viral tweet, where do they go to do so?
I'm mostly active on Twitter. You can follow me there at Brianna Wu. And you got to let me plug Rocket, which has two of your friends on it, including me, Simone de Rochefort and Christina Warren. So we're over on Relay, and we are a barrel full of monkeys.
It is one of the best shows in the podcast ecosystem for sure. Rocket on Relay. All right, Brianna Wu, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So an interesting story popped up, I think it was just yesterday. I saw it fly by about TikTok and some potential uses for it outside of learning, the latest new dance or figuring out, what's replacing the Chubby Bunny challenge. And this one was kind of not what I expected it to be. So I immediately said, oh boy, I know who we've got to have on the show today. Joining us, it is my absolute pleasure to say, Abrar Al-Heeti from CNET is here to talk to us about TikTok. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being your TikTok go-to person.
Well, let's kick things off here with kind of an explanation of this new feature that TikTok is trying out before we kind of get into, because as I mentioned to you in inviting you to the show, I think this on its own maybe is not a super in-depth story, but it's kind of the thoughts surrounding it and the impact of it. So we've got to start with explaining what's going on, what TikTok is experimenting with before we get into the bigger impact here.
Absolutely. So TikTok is launching this pilot program called TikTok Resumes. And so they, as you said, not only want you to pick up the newest dances and find out about the latest products that people are talking about, but they want you to find a job. And so they want people to go to TikTok, use a hashtag TikTok Resumes, and have companies spot them or find companies that are looking to hire new employees. And what they want you to do is essentially they want you to show your personality through these videos. So they want to, they don't just want you to turn in a resume and not have companies know what you're like or what your interests are or what you're passionate about. They want you to show companies. And there's such a wide range of companies here. There's Target, Shopify, Chipotle, Abercrombie & Fitch. I noticed even TikTok has job postings on this. And so essentially it's a website that you go to and you can see all these listings. But what you do is you create your TikTok video, and then you drop in a link for your TikTok video, which has your elevator pitch, and you just apply to whatever company you want to apply to, ranging from entry level all the way to expert.
Okay, so see, this is what's interesting about this, because I think when people would hear about this right off the bat, there's so much here, because we've got to think about how humans by default are just incredibly resistant to change, and due to any level of unknown and the fear that comes with that, are also resistant to kind of the world changing while they stay the same. And so I think immediately you're going to have folks going, okay, this doesn't make sense. It's not how you do resumes. It's not how you apply for a job. It's back in my day, this is how we applied. You got one sheet, and if you had more than one, it got thrown in the trash and all of that. So I find it interesting. You've pointed out there that it's not just that you can, send out your TikTok video, your resume or your application in that way, but it's companies actually kind of going to this portal and saying, we're interested in looking at this. So is it in what you've seen, is it a particular type of company that seems to be into this, or did any of the companies that are on the list kind of surprise you?
Yeah, it was such a wide range of companies. I mean, one of the things that I thought was really cool was I saw a listing for an all recipes on-camera host and producer. And so it's like, what better way to find if someone's a good fit for that role than to see them in a TikTok video and see what they're like on camera and see how comfortable they are. So when I see roles like that, I'm like, well, that really makes sense for something like this, because you can't pick up on that when you turn in, an online resume that's just written. And so, I think it's really cool that it really does range from, you have retail and then you have all the way up to executives at various tech companies or, like on camera stuff like this. There was listings for like NASCAR and people in sales. I mean, it's stuff that doesn't just relate to, being on camera, but I think when people see what you're like and they see your energy, that becomes a really important indicator, because, someone could have the skills, but if they don't fit into your company culture, we hear a lot about company culture. You can teach people skills, but you can't teach people how to get along with everyone and how to fit in at the company. So I'm thinking that this is really going to be helpful for a lot of people. And yeah, it can be hard to get over that. Okay, this is weird. Like, why would a 1-minute video be something that I use to determine who to hire? But I think there's a lot of benefit here. So if you can get over that, that mental obstacle, I think you can recognize a lot of the potential here.
Yeah. And in fact, a friend of mine was applying recently using kind of more traditional means. And I didn't know that in modern times, there are you call in for a phone interview, for example, and it's like a pre-recorded thing where they read off the question and then you respond. And then the person who's hiring will get the recording of your responses to the different questions that you put in. And so it seems like, this tech is already in some ways part of the hiring process. And this helps in some ways to automate it. I do wonder, and I'm curious, your take on this. There are, especially in the United States, certain laws, regulations, et cetera, around bias in hiring and making sure that, certain isms don't play into the hiring practice. Do you think that with TikTok video, with you, going in with video, how do you think that impacts or plays a role in the concerns that folks might have about hiring?
I have been thinking a lot about that because you hear a lot of terrible stories of people, disqualifying candidates because they have names that sound too ethnic. And so this kind of takes that to the next level because it's like, here's what I look like. Do you you'd like to think that hopefully people aren't that biased, but they are. I mean, that's the reality of it. And so, that is a really important consideration. And so, I hope that these companies that are taking part in this are more forward thinking and wouldn't let something like that be an obstacle. But I mean, you think about even with AI being biased, right? And so, we're still trying to overcome that no matter what technology we roll out. And AI is increasingly being used in the recruitment process and in the hiring process, and you still see issues there. But then I guess you try to look on the bright side here. Okay, well, how can we use technology to our advantage? And how can we, what's the good here? And I think the good here is that, you do get to see, I mean, we're all on our phones a lot more often now. I saw this Glassdoor report that said around almost 80% of millennials use their phones to apply for jobs. And, Gen X is at 73% and baby boomers are at 57. So like with each generation, just imagine what Gen Z is going to be like. And so we're all on our phones anyway. So why not use these technologies to, help companies find people and to help employers find places where they would like to work. So I'm really excited to see. I mean, I'm hoping the good trumps the bad here. Right.
Absolutely. Now let's, a hypothetical, LinkedIn comes out with a tool to let you, attach a video to a job application. Versus TikTok doing this. We've had you on before to talk about TikTok in general, and one of the things that you talk about is authenticity on the platform and how it seems that those videos that feel more authentic, feel more in the moment, feel more a connection between you and the person that's on the camera, that's something unique to TikTok or nearly unique to TikTok. Do you think that there is a difference between TikTok doing this versus a company like LinkedIn doing this? Is there something more likely for folks to want to use TikTok for this versus LinkedIn, or do you think it's just a generational thing? What are your thoughts on that?
Do you remember those memes where it's like, here's my persona on Facebook, here's my persona on LinkedIn, here's my persona on whatever. So I think about that, I think about the fact that on TikTok, a lot of people aren't as polished, whereas on LinkedIn, we're all our most professional selves. And, we obviously want to put our best foot forward so companies see, how good we can be if we worked for them. But on TikTok, you get these very unfiltered views into people's lives. And I think you really get that there more than anywhere else. So, I think the advantage there, it could also be a disadvantage depending on the type of content that you upload, because it's very easy for employers, if your videos are public, to see what else you've posted. Okay, here's your really good resume. What else have you shared on this platform? So I think, it gives a more honest view on what somebody is like versus, the more polished image that a lot of us have on LinkedIn. But I think that can be a huge advantage, I think, especially for companies that are open to people who might not be like cookie cutter, like corporate employees. I think it'll be an interesting take to look at what people are uploading there.
Yeah, I think if I were to go from the hiring perspective side of things, I'm interviewing some candidates, and I use this as a tool to do so. And I can go and look at their videos, and especially in creative roles and whatever role that might be, being able to see the other content that they put out and better understanding a person because of that versus one sheet of paper or one sheet of PDF. To actually get a grasp of who this person is and then have that tied to their more authentic life is really interesting. I'm curious kind of your thoughts on, so it used to be the way a long time ago, before I got into journalism, I was very into graphic design and was planning on going into graphic design as a career. And so I spent a lot of time looking all over the internet at graphic design resumes and seeing these beautifully designed resumes and ones that stood out in different ways. And now we've got this new way of doing it with video. So I'm kind of curious your thoughts on the way to stand out when it comes to all of these other people who are applying for jobs. Do you kind of feel that video, especially this kind, potentially gives you a leg up over the competition?
I think one of the really cool things about TikTok is that people, will often, even if they're not trying to go viral, they're just posting something that they're really passionate about. Here's something that I made, here's something that I do. And then it gets a lot of attention, and then other opportunities come from there. I think there really is huge potential here because of the algorithm and because of the ability for everyday people to go viral, oftentimes more easily than on other platforms. I think this is a really cool way to showcase your talents. There was even, on the FAQ for this TikTok resumes feature, it said, what if I'm not necessarily looking for a job? And TikTok said, you should still post something because it still might catch somebody's eye. And so I think if you do something that really stands out, if you do something that people connect with, and because of the algorithm, it'll often show up on people's pages who, it's a creepy algorithm, but it's honestly so spot on. It'll show up in front of the right people, more often than not. And so I think there's just so much potential there that if there is something that you're passionate about, if there is something that you've created that you'd love to show off, my go-to place would be to post it on TikTok because I think it's more likely to catch more eyes. And so it is interesting to see how, there was this other within that TikTok resumes hashtag. It shows people who have career tips or have their own experiences. And one girl I saw, she posted that she had been posting on TikTok. TikTok reached out to her. She now works for TikTok, and she now has like collaborations with brands. Like that's just she just posted a video, and it became this whole thing. And so now she has like several thousand followers and works for this company. So you really never know where it's going to take you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going to take a quick break and thank the sponsor of Tech News Weekly, and that is ExpressVPN. And let's just say I've been to a few coffee shops in my day, and when I go, it always feels weird to just hop onto their Wi-Fi and just browse and log into my accounts without having some sort of protection. Now, I know most of you are probably thinking, why don't you just use incognito mode? Well, let me tell you something. Incognito mode doesn't actually hide your activity. It doesn't matter what mode you use or how many times you clear your browsing history on your device. Your internet service provider can still see every single website that you've ever visited. And that's why, even when I'm at home, I don't go online without using ExpressVPN. It doesn't matter who your ISP is, your internet service provider in the US can legally sell your information to ad companies, and they often do. ExpressVPN is an app that reroutes your internet connection through their secure servers so your ISP can't see the sites that you visit. ExpressVPN also keeps all of your information secure by encrypting 100% of your data with the most powerful encryption available. Now, most of the time, I can fully admit, I don't even realize that I have ExpressVPN on. It runs seamlessly in the background. It's super easy to use. All you have to do is tap a single button and you're protected. ExpressVPN is available on all of your devices. That's phones, computers, even your smart TV. So there's no excuse for you to not be using it. Protect your online activity today with the VPN rated #1 by Business Insider. Visit our exclusive link, expressvpn.com/TNW, and you can get an extra 3 months free on a 1-year package. That's expressvpn.com/TNW. expressvpn.com/TNW. Go there and learn more, and we thank ExpressVPN for their support. Apple last week unleashed, as we know, I think we talked about it on the show plenty last week, an insane amount of new hardware products for consumers to delight in, as they usually do with Apple products. Last week also happened to be Earth Week. And compared against each other, they kind of highlight a pretty major and very mounting issue for this planet. And joining us to talk all about this is former co-founder and editor-in-chief of 10, Damon Beres, who wrote a fantastic op-ed for the New York Times on this topic. Welcome to the show, Damon.
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. It's good to have some 1-0 alumni on. Appreciate you taking out time. And so this topic, this is an important one, right? Because it's not just, we're also used to, in the technology world, being passionate about technology, we're used to the next thing, the latest, the greatest, moving on. I can't even tell you how many smartphones I've had and have in a drawer, consequently. And yet at the same time, we're living on a planet that is, over time, kind of in many ways deteriorating and to a certain degree under the weight of all of this kind of consumer technology. So talk a little bit, maybe we can start with kind of the cognitive dissonance between Apple's hardware event and Earth Week. You kind of led your piece on that. So let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is indeed a cognitive dissonance. As I say, Apple, of course, talks quite a lot about sustainability, sustainable energy, etc. It releases an environmental report every year that talks about its supposed environmental commitments, many of which are very laudable. What it's not doing a very great job on, along with many other companies in the consumer tech space, is electronic waste, making sure that the devices that it creates and ships every single year last for as long as possible and are repairable by the greatest number of people. These are devices that are very difficult to open and repair. There is very little requirement, really, Apple is not required at all to provide thorough documentation that shows independent repair shops how to repair these devices. And of course, through things like the iPhone upgrade program, consumers are put in a position where they are encouraged to get a new device on an annual basis. And even without participating in a program like that, you're getting maybe a couple or a few years out of these very expensive and wasteful electronics at best. So Apple, along with many other manufacturers, is kind of talking out of both sides of its mouth, where it's saying there are all of these things it's doing to be, quote unquote, sustainable, but then it's rolling out millions upon millions upon millions of these new devices every single year. And the Earth Week event really puts all of that into perspective. So it's talking about Earth Week, and then, hey, we have new Macs and we have AirTags and all of these new metal and plastic devices you can purchase now.
Yeah, so you actually write about planned obsolescence, and I want to talk a little bit about that, because to a certain degree, like I have a hard time finding how I feel about the idea of planned obsolescence. On one hand, I totally believe that it exists. I've certainly had those moments with my device where I'm like, I can't believe this is doing this right now. Oh, this company totally knew this was going to happen. This is by design, right? It feels like a frustrating moment, and it's easy to point the finger. But then on the other hand, I'm like, is that would a company actually do that? Is this just some sort of widely known conspiracy theory that we all just kind of point to planned obsolescence because it's the easy thing to point to? But I guess from a business sense, it makes sense. Maybe it's just not this this nefarious thing when it's thought of. It's just business as usual. What are your thoughts on that?
Totally. So I think, first of all, you're correct in what you're kind of suggesting here, which is it's not necessarily like Apple has this kill switch and it's like, oh, it's been a year, shut the person's iPhone off and now they have to buy a new one. It's not happening like that. But what does happen, what we clearly see, is that hardware is obsoleted by software updates. So, for example, the new iOS update that happens every year often will remove a generation of iPhone compatibility. Apple's gotten a little bit better at this recently. The most recent version of iOS, I believe it supports back to the iPhone 6S, which at this point is a few years old. So that's kind of nice. But then again, wouldn't it be better if you could still be using an iPhone 5, for example, an iPhone 5C, whatever? The fact of the matter is that software updates will often remove a generation of hardware compatibility. So that's one example of this quote-unquote planned obsolescence. And then additionally, there are things such as the iPhone's battery health. That has clearly been a major issue. And the what we have seen in the past is that Apple will, on the software side, throttle an iPhone that has an old battery that isn't at maximum capacity. And that's another way of obsoleting a device. So it doesn't need to be as obvious or as kind of cartoonishly evil as Apple sort of obliterating a bunch of devices. But there are these little things that kind of, in a sort of artificial way, move an iPhone or a MacBook out of compatibility and make it not work for consumers anymore, essentially.
Yeah, we're talking a lot about Apple here, but obviously this is like a just technology industry-wide issue. This isn't just Apple that's doing this. When you mention battery, I mean, I'm on Android. I do an Android show here on the network, so I've played for the last 11 years. I've lived my life on Android, and I would say the number one thing that makes an Android device obsolete. Well, actually, I guess on Android it's two equal things, right? If it's an underpowered device, it can't keep up, from a hardware perspective, from a processing perspective. But really the thing that I point to the most is that battery. If I was to buy an Android device and want to keep this device for 5 years, let's say, which, let's be real, that should be possible. We should be able to spend as much as we do on these smartphones and keep them for 5 years and use them.
Totally.
But the battery is just not capable of withstanding that. After like a year and a half, we start to notice these huge dips in the battery capacity, and then we have to do other things to supplement it, get a battery case or an external charger that we carry around with us, whatever the case is. And you're right, that's not a sustainable thing, depending, I don't know how it is on Apple, whether it's as steep as it is on Android.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because, so first of all, I talk about Apple a lot in my reporting around this issue because Apple is very much the trendsetter in the technology, the consumer tech industry in many ways. And additionally, Apple does talk quite a bit about its environmental commitments. And so that dissonance is always kind of interesting to me. But you are absolutely right that this is a major issue well outside of Apple's walled garden. In fact, many other companies, I think, do a worse job on this count. So you mentioned Android. Samsung, for example, their smartphones are perhaps more challenging than Apple's to service and repair. They come in strange form factors, folded or curved screens, for example, this proprietary kind of Samsung design. They're just as locked down as the iPhone is. So repairs are very challenging on those devices as well. Now, the thing that is interesting about the battery is that it used to be that phones, that computers, that a lot of consumer technology would have modular parts, or it would give the consumer the ability to pop the battery out and replace it with a new one if need be, right? Like old Nokia phones always let you do that, for example. Now that everything is bolted in to your smartphone and glued down to the device and sealed in to this extremely small package that the consumer can't actually open themselves, if something goes wrong with the battery and it impacts your ability to use your device, you can no longer just pop that thing out and have a good as new phone. You have to get it serviced, or maybe you think that's not really worth it. It's a couple years old. I'm gonna buy the new thing, or I'm on the iPhone upgrade program anyway. I'll get the new iPhone when it comes out in 2 months. So the battery, it's a very interesting issue because we've seen that whole situation has evolved over the course of several years at this point and is a major driving factor for people replacing their technology.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Another thing that reading through your piece, you do spend a lot of time talking or writing about the right to repair and kind of the things that are happening with the French government, the repairability score. Here in the U.S., we're hearing about different pieces of legislation that are in the works about right to repair. How do you think this is going to influence these trends? Like, do you think it will make a like a marketable difference in how these companies are producing their products, taking the sustainability and longevity away from an afterthought, something they think about afterwards as like a problem that needs a solution after they've already released it, and more into the proactive space where they're designing these products to live longer?
Sure. So the most interesting thing about the right to repair legislation that we're talking about is that it will help the average consumer allow their device to last as long as possible, right? So what this legislation typically seeks is a company like Apple would have to provide schematic information, wiring diagrams, documentation that would allow an independent repair company or individual outside of just the sort of Apple authorized repair outlet that you might see driving around or whatever. It is designed to allow any independent repair organization or individual to access the information they need to fix a device like the iPhone. So what that ends up doing is it will help people like you and me find shops, find people who have the ability to actually fix their device when things go wrong, to extend the longevity of that device, which is very important. And right now, in a lot of cases, I live in New York, you're in California, we are probably accustomed to saying, this isn't that big of a deal. There's tons of repair shops, whatever. But there are a ton of people throughout the US who don't have easy access to good repair options. And then they do have to go through a company like Apple or Samsung directly to get the thing serviced. This legislation is designed to fix that problem. As for whether that ultimately impacts how Apple, et cetera, designs their technology, I suppose that's a little bit hard to say. I would hope that it does have that effect where, maybe they decide, well, this information's out there anyway. We can make it easier to actually pop open the phone and repair the thing. Who knows if that happens, but that doesn't necessarily need to happen for there to be a positive impact in terms of device longevity. And as for what we're seeing in the EU and France with the repairability index score, that actually could influence how consumers purchase new devices, which, people, when the economic situation starts to change a little bit, that's when you might see something interesting in terms of how companies decide to design and release these products.
Yeah, and I know on the Android side of things, we've seen some pretty interesting efforts from the modular perspective. Now, none of it worked. None of it really, came out on the other end as like a total success. Google had its Project Aura. That really kind of fizzled before it ever got any sort of actual consumer movement. Moto mods, of course. Recently, in the last couple of years, we've heard about the Fairphone, which is kind of like a sustainable smartphone with modular parts and everything. But each time it seems like, while I completely appreciate the nerdiness and the intentions of these devices, it just kind of seems like the consumer, like the general consumer, isn't as interested in the idea, or maybe it's just a failure in marketing, but they never really seem to go anywhere. Do you think that's an idea that's just too far in advance of its possible like time to shine? Like maybe that's an idea that works in the next 5 years, but it was too early to do 5 years ago.
That's possible. I mean, listen, these are niche devices. So the Fairphone, for example, that product is still around. And in fact, one of the things that's really great about Android as an operating system is that a company like Fairphone can come along and decide, hey, we're going to build a phone with this OS and it's going to be modular and it's going to be a more quote unquote ethical phone than the one you might buy from Samsung. That's great. And that's one of the nice things about Android as compared to like iOS, for example. Only Apple can make the iPhone, right? In terms of consumer demand, I mean, listen, it's niche. Awareness around the issue of device longevity and repair, et cetera, is growing, and it has become a much larger issue in the past couple of years even. So the New York Times, they published an editorial about right to repair a couple of years ago, and then mine came around earlier this week. Like, that's a really mainstream thing. And maybe that helps people see this issue in more serious terms, and maybe that becomes a more marketable thing. But, at the end of the day, people also do love these products from Apple, Samsung, etc. These phones are nicer than the Fairphone. I mean, in terms of the sort of sleek design and the state-of-the-art features, etc., which matter to a lot of people. Nicer than those old clunky modular Motorola phones, even though those were wonderful from the sort of longevity perspective. But, I think more awareness can only help. And perhaps we do start to see that there's a shift here now that more people understand that, hey, maybe I should be interested in a more modular device or something that will last a little longer. Fundamentally, though, the big players in tech are the big players in tech, Apple, Samsung, etc. These are the companies they need to receive legislative pressure or otherwise to improve their practices rather than us waiting around and hoping that some much smaller organization is going to be able to design something that ends up becoming popular with a large consumer base. It's just not likely to happen that way.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Damon, such a pleasure getting you on the show today to talk about this important topic. And I love what you wrote. So everybody should check it out on the New York Times. In New York Times, nytimes.com. If people want to follow you online and the work that you're doing now, where can they find you?
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter at @DLBeres. That's the best way to see what I'm up to. So give it a look. And thank you so much for having me on the show. This is great.
Absolutely. We'll be in touch. We'll be following your work. Thank you again, Damon.
Right.
Take care of yourself.
Thank you. You too.
Talk to you soon. Going to take a quick break and thank the sponsor of this episode of Tech News Weekly. That is Melissa. Guess what? It's a brand new year, and you need accurate customer address data to ensure your business is a success. And did you know that nearly 36 million address changes were processed by the U.S. Postal Service in 2020? That's a huge chunk of customers you could be missing out on. Well, Melissa can help make sure your data is current and accurate. Melissa is both experienced and independent, has over 35 years of data quality expertise, which explains why over 10,000 businesses know them as the address experts. Melissa also has a renewal rate of over 92% because 25% is the typical ROI for Melissa customers. You can verify addresses, emails, phone numbers, names, all in real time with Melissa. Melissa's global address verification service verifies addresses for more than 240 countries and territories at the point of entry. So when you're in a field and you're typing in your address and then suddenly it pops up at the top of the list right below your field, that's probably Melissa working in the background. If you're tired of duplicate customer information in the database, Melissa's data matching will help eliminate clutter and duplicates. That increases the accuracy of the database. It also reduces postage and mailing costs. You can process an entire address list for accuracy and completeness. You reduce risk, of course, ensuring compliance and keeping customers happy by verifying identity. You can convert addresses into lat-long coordinates. And you can remove up to 95% of bad email addresses from your database. Melissa's flexible deployment options offer different platforms to suit any preference, business size, or even budget. With flexible on-prem, web service, secure FTP processing, and SaaS delivery options. Melissa also has their new Lookups app, and you can get that on iOS or on Android, to search addresses, names, and more, all at your fingertips. Melissa continually undergoes independent security audits to reinforce their commitment to data security, privacy, and compliance requirements. They're SOC 2, HIPAA, and GDPR compliant as a result. Now, Melissa's Global Support Center, it offers 24/7 world-renowned support. So if you're signing up for a service level agreement, you get that amazing support. You want to inquire about that today. Melissa's also still supporting communities and qualifying essential workers during COVID-19. So you can actually see if your organization qualifies for 6 months of free service. That's awesome. By applying online at melissa.com. And finally, please join us in congratulating Melissa. They were named to the Data Quality Magic Quadrant by Gartner for the second consecutive year. Make sure your customer contact data is up to date. Try Melissa's APIs in the developer portal. It's easy to log on, sign up, and start playing in the API sandbox 24/7. Get started today with 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/twit. That's melissa.com/twit.
Alrighty, folks, you may have heard that Amazon announced a whole slew of new products. I mean, you may have just heard that, as that's what Jason said as we went into the ad break. But in case you didn't hear that, you're just now tuning in, you're just now listening. Amazon had its sort of Echo Ring event. It's kind of it's one of these events now with the multiple product lines that they have, where they're announcing several new bits of technology, and a lot of it this year featured products with cameras. Joining us today to talk about Amazon's expansion of surveillance in the home is the Washington Post's Heather Kelly. Welcome back to the show, Heather.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we are happy to have you here. So before we kind of dig into the privacy implications and surveillance concerns, it would be great if we could give our listeners kind of a rundown of some of the products that we'll be talking about today, the new Ring stuff and the new Astro dealie.
Sure. All right. Let me see if I can remember these all. Amazon, unlike Apple, I feel like it just tries to cram in even more products into these events. And what's interesting about that is it's just throwing everything out there to see what sticks. Mm-hmm. It's expecting some of these to fail. So keep that in mind. Some of them are beta. All right. There was a giant Echo Show. It's a smart screen with a always on speaker, and it goes on your wall. And the pitch was, organizing your family is hard. This will fix all your problems. So it looks like a giant, like an iPhone, kind of the little widget screen. Mm-hmm. You can put stickies on it. All this stuff. It's cool. Opt-in feature they would like me to point out is that it has a camera, and if it recognizes you walking by, it will switch what's showing on the screen to be customized for you. And the microphone is always listening, and it can hear household sounds like a dog barking or a refrigerator door left open and beeping, and send you a text notification.
Didn't realize it had a microphone.
Everything has a microphone, except for the flying drone, which is our next one. They announced this last year. It's an indoor security camera because apparently they seem really concerned that there's angles inside of our house that are not on camera. And so they're solving for that problem. And so this little thing, it comes up and it flies around your house, and it only does video and not audio, and it's for security. And what else has cameras? There's the robot, obviously, which is a favorite. It's adorable. It's basically an Echo Show with a little periscope camera that goes up, and it's mounted on a Roomba. And it goes around your house to watch things. You can tell it not to go into rooms, but I'm like, if it has a periscope camera, can it just be like...
You can still look into the room.
So there's that one. And what else am I missing? There was... a kid's gadget that basically looks like a really chunky Saved by the Bell cell phone. And You just put it down, and it has a projector. And the pitch for this was interesting. They're like, oh, instead of having like the bad kind of screen time, this smartphone-like device does less, has a stand so they're not wandering around with it, and lets them FaceTime and interact with people, which is another interesting problem. I think those were my favorites. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
For sure.
Those are the big guys, yeah.
Yeah, because the other stuff was some Blink updates, including, it's interesting how Amazon has two companies kind of competing. You've got Ring on one side with the Ring video doorbell. Now Blink has a video doorbell and a bunch of new products, including one that has floodlights. And so Amazon is, I don't know, trying to balance the two as options for people. But yeah, those ones kind of being the big players in the space, particularly, we want to talk about the robot. But before we get there, I do want to kind of get a little bit more into, so this sort of wall display, it's like a picture frame almost with a screen inside, and it has all of these features that we allegedly have long wanted. That's what they'll always tell us anyway. You've got the family cork board or the family whiteboard, but this is all just on this display. And I have to be honest with you, I quite liked the idea of this product as, I use the Echo devices that I have in my home as ambient displays that give me information throughout the day. Are all of the features including the microphone feature, are those opt-in? I should say, are all of the kind of surveillance features, so the microphone that's always listening and the video that will see that you're you and then change the screen, both of those are opt-in features?
Kind of. So the one that recognizes you is definitely opt-in. Using the microphone for this particular thing is opt-in, but the microphone is still always on because that's what makes it an echo. So you may say, don't listen for this, but it's still listening. Still listening,
yeah, for the wake word. Gotcha. So it seems like most of the focus has been on Astro, which is the ALEXA-enabled robot. But I wonder if that has to do with the fact that we've known about this always home drone for some time. Could you talk to the listeners a little bit more about the always home drone? Because this product was announced a while back. There wasn't originally a launch date. Has Amazon come out with a launch date now? That is not a pun, although I guess it could be. And how exactly is this meant to work in your home? I mean, I've got dogs, for example. Is the drone going to attack my dogs while I'm outside of the house? Did they talk about that at all?
It's just going to keep your dogs in like a mini surveillance state so that you can yell at them. It's a real example. And I know dogs don't know, but it's like, just let your dog chill out, man. It has like some time away from you during the day. So there were a few more details. It's actually still a little fuzzy. I believe they might ship at the end of the year. It was definitely a might because, as with everything in the supply chain, who knows? Nothing certain. The way it works is it's like a big square. It looks like a little air filter. And you can schedule to do different things, but I think basically you can have it do like a little sentry, like regular passes throughout your house while you're gone. Make sure, the dogs and the children are all doing what they're supposed to be doing. I'm worried about the children.
It's not Elf on the Shelf this year. It's Elf in the Sky.
You can put the little ears on it. That's actually a really good idea.
That's horrifying.
That is horrifying.
I already find Elf on the Shelf horrifying. This just doubles it down. Oh, anyway.
I do not believe in Elf on the Shelf.
This is not a parenting podcast.
Everything's a parenting podcast.
Also true.
So yeah, the idea is that it's one of the few indoor devices that is definitely a security device. Everything else indoors was like pitched as, those infomercials where people can't open jars and like, oh, this is so hard. If only. That's what everything else was. It was like, we solved problems that were making sound harder than they were.
Got it. So then let's talk about Astro. Astro is this adorable looking robot with, as you said, a telescopic or periscope camera, and can, drive around your house and look innocent while it spies on you. I saw some reports of developers talking about how it ended up kind of like running into things a lot and would throw itself downstairs. And
same.
Right, exactly. It's wild how so much alike robots and humans are. But was Astro, because you said that the drone was kind of the big one in terms of security, is Astro supposed to be my little buddy as well, or is it mainly for going throughout the space and making sure that everything's a-okay? I mean, like, am I gonna walk in and my kid is talking to it and they're plotting against me? What is the functionality of Astro?
Astro is very much not framed as a security device by Amazon. It is a home helper, an assistant. It's just there to pay attention to your kids when you're busy, go through the rooms. It's pitched as fun, and it's fun and non-threatening because they gave it like the biggest robot tell, giant round eyes. Like that is just the go-to for robots, and it's absolutely effective to like make them non-threatening to people. Even those supermarket robots with big googly eyes, It's a pretty neat trick. And so, I believe it cannot yet bring you a drink, but part of the schematics could maybe give it a cup holder. It can just wander around your house. However, I believe in an interview with the New York Times, David Limp, who's the head of products and services, said that one of his uses might be to check if his kids are like getting into the liquor cabinet. I don't know if that is accurate. I don't want to say David Limp's kids are in the liquor cabinet, but it was something that the kids might be doing. Right. Yeah. Checking to see if the kids are sneaking more Oreos. We'll go with the more innocent version. Yes, that's wholesome. I bet that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
The cookie jar mode. Yeah.
So it has a touch screen. Am I like bending over or crouching down to interact with it? Or does Amazon see this mostly as interaction via voice? Or, I mean, because I don't know, obviously with my dogs, I have very small dogs. And so either they jump up to me or I crouch down to them and I don't have a problem with that. But there's something about a robot where doing more work kind of makes it feel like it's defeating the purpose. Is the primary interaction meant to be through Amazon's voice assistant? And is it itself a voice assistant? Like, can I say, Astro, go get the newspaper? Or is it like, Alexa, ask Astro to go get the newspaper? What's the primary means of interacting with the device?
So now that you ask, I'm completely not confident. I assume and believe that it is in fact just like an Echo, like you can talk to it. In some of the videos they showed, though, it was children at Astro's level sitting on the ground talking like this. So when it comes to kid, the idea is that it is something that they can interact with. I don't know, do their homework with it, talk to it, look up trivia.
This is interesting because I feel like a lot of the news out there, a lot of the articles out there have been positioning this Astro as a robot who goes around patrolling or goes around, watching your home. And of course, we understand that from the perspective of the underlying concerns. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the functionality of the robot, what it was built to do, it seems like it might be aimed at families with kids. It seems like it's more of a companion. Not that it, necessarily is going to do a good job at that. Less of a utility and more of a toy is what it's sounding like.
Okay, let's keep in mind, this is going to be like $1,000 robot. And that's just the early one. I think it goes up to $1,200 or $1,500 once it's released for real. So I think that's a lot for a toy. And also you have to think like the utility of a camera on a periscope arm, like there's no sort of fun angle to that. It's very much, I'm keeping an eye on my home. I'm keeping an eye on the people in my home if they're there. I don't see a fun use for like boop, boop, boop. Maybe other people can come up with them. And then there is the privacy feature. Don't go into certain rooms, which very much acknowledges that like you've got a thing rolling around that can put you on camera, and it's something you should definitely keep in mind if you want to invite one into your house.
Absolutely. The last, it sounds to one of the. I can't remember where I saw this now. There was an article, I believe it was this morning, kind of talking about how Amazon now seems to be, and some other companies too, are basically beta testing while using people's money to do so. That, these products are early days products. That's, it's $1,000 now and $1,500 later because we don't know what the final version is going to look like, but we want to get this out to folks. Do we think that this is kind of Amazon's MO going forward, given that it has shown that it continues to kind of iterate in public, but iterate again with people's money at the end of the day?
Yeah, I mean, they've always honestly been really open about this. They had a name for it that I'm forgetting of, like, it's our beta program. I feel like there's a lot of early adopters. I'm guessing a lot of them watch your show that would be excited to test out something, even if it ends up not being a successful product. Maybe not for $1,000. This one's on the higher end. And then they even launched something on their website this year that was like, here, we're gonna throw out some of our crazy ideas. If enough people pre-order it, we'll make it. And like, I absolutely 100% pre-ordered the printer for sticky notes.
Me too. Yes, they're day one editions products. And yes, sticky notes printer. I can't wait. I was so excited to see that it got funded. Finally got a shipping notification for it. So yeah, there are some
shipping notification.
You better check your spam.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was pumped about that one. I was kind of surprised that I thought for sure that the smart nutrition scale would get funded, and I wasn't surprised that the cuckoo clock did not get funded. But the printer was the only one of those three that did. That felt a little bit more for me. It felt more clear that that's what they were doing. With this, it does seem, because they're kind of lumping everything together and saying, look what new products we have for Ring and what new products we have for Echo. And so to sort of iterate in public with those kind of felt disingenuous. But I guess if they go with that day one branding for these products, then it will feel a little less like it's just like, hey, try this out. And thank you for giving us your money to help us make this product a reality. Really quickly, because we do need to let you go, but the last one that we mentioned was that Amazon Glow, this projection screen technology, very kids focused. Did Amazon spend any time during its event talking about the privacy implications of this technology, what they're doing to protect your children's privacy in particular, and then have they continued to try to shape the narrative regarding ALEXA and privacy and Amazon in general and privacy?
So, I mean, I think that's a problem with some of these events. Like maybe some people got pre-briefed. There was no pre-briefing. You're being told things and reporting on them immediately. And there's not a lot of time to go in depth with all the privacy features. They're kind of always mentioned at the end of a section of like, and it's end-to-end encrypted. So I'm very confident that Amazon is very actively adding the privacy features. But when you release 10 products in a day in like an hour and a half, like how in-depth are you getting with these privacy features? How well are you explaining in that? And I think that's honestly like a kind of a problem that the company has had is they're very worried that people don't think of these things as like privacy focused. And it's like, if we just slow down, if we talk about it more, but some of it is just the very approach of like, we start with cameras and microphones in the home, and then we add privacy settings and protections. And it was like, maybe we should take a step back and ask the question, should we be putting cameras and microphones in so many parts of our lives? For the kids device, my biggest complaint wasn't the privacy. I'm sure it's very locked down. They have a history of making kind of kids devices that are not great, but private. The Amazon Fire Kids is terrible. But it reminds me of the Portal, and like, we have tablets and phones that do this. You just put them on a stand. I really don't see the need to remake an entire product. You can even get a little projector for your iPad for your kids.
Right, exactly. I have to agree with you there. I think it was one of those, did someone ask for this kind of things? I need numbers. I need to know these people because I want to talk to them. Heather Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for your wit, and thank you for writing up about Amazon and what its latest products include. Of course, folks can head over to the Washington Post to check out your great work. I know you recently launched, I believe it's called Help Desk with a group of folks.
Send me your questions and I will answer them to the best of my ability. We got a whole team of people, and we're just here. Your help desk at washpost.com. Send us your problems.
Awesome. And then if folks want to follow you online, where should they go to do so?
I'm on Twitter, unfortunately, and it's at Heather Kelly. And then I'm on TikTok, but I will never post anything. I just waste all my time there. So.
Yeah, just lurk. Me too. All right, Heather Kelly, thank you so much. We will see you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Wow, am I happy that I don't have Amazon products in my home. What about you, Mikah?
I don't want the robot. Everybody wants me to have the robot. I don't want the robot. I will not add the robot to my home, but I do have a number of other ALEXA devices creeping around here. And sometimes I just hit that mute button and make sure they're not listening to me because I do occasionally say words that are too close to that wake word.
Yeah, and let me just reiterate so that I'm not up on my high horse. I have plenty of other devices in my house surveilling me, so it's not like I don't have surveillance devices in my home, but I just don't have Amazons, and I don't know that it makes much of a difference, to be honest.
Yeah, they're all doing their thing, aren't they?
They are. That's what makes them so dang useful. Well, this has been a wonderful year. I will say I love doing this show because we get to talk to so many just smart, awesome people. Like it's the show that I get the opportunity to do in my life, where I get to talk to some of my heroes, the people who are writing the articles that we're all writing. Sometimes we get to talk to the people who are actually on the other side of the story, making that news. And it's a cool opportunity to be in this position, to be able to interview people who are this smart and this dialed in and connected to the things that we discuss as a culture around technology year after year. So, and also I just enjoyed doing a show with you, Mikah. So thanks for a great year.
I enjoy doing the show with you too, and I'm really proud of the diversity that we get to bring through Tech News Weekly as well. We have all sorts of people from all sorts of different backgrounds, occasionally people outside of the United States, which is, I think, something that's incredibly lacking in tech coverage as a whole. And so getting to speak to all these different people with all these different perspectives on these different stories, and then the ones that we also bring with our stories of the week that cover some things that maybe folks are not paying attention to. That's the work that I'm really proud of. And so, yeah, this was a great year of awesome, interesting, hilarious, terrifying, and many, many other adjective stories. And I think I can, tie a bow on it and say we did good work.
It's a roller coaster of emotion here at Tech News Weekly, year after year. You can find this show by just going to twit.tv/TNW. We do record this show every Thursday. We will be back next week, which is the first episode of the new year. So we're going to start things off right. So look for that. Just subscribe. Go to twit.tv/TNW and you can subscribe to the podcast there.
And if you'd like to, you can check out Club Twit by becoming a member of Club Twit at twit.tv/clubtwit. Costs you $7 a month. And by becoming a member, you can get every single one of the Twit shows with no ads, including this one. You also get access to the exclusive Twit Plus bonus feed that has content you won't find anywhere else, behind the scenes, before the show, after the show, outtakes, etc. Lots of great stuff there, and access to the members-only Discord server. If you're going, what the heck is that? Well, if you've ever used Microsoft Teams or Slack or one of those other communication platforms, you will be familiar with Discord because it works a lot the same way. But you get to hang out with your fellow Club Twit members as well as those of us here at Twit. Super fun stuff there. twit.tv/clubtwit to check that out. And you can also subscribe to individual shows, if you'd like, by subscribing in Apple Podcasts. You just find the audio version of TNW in Apple Podcasts, and you'll see a button there. For $2.99 a month, you'll get the ad-free version of the audio feed by tapping on that button. And yeah, that's a great way to support the show directly. And all of us here at Twit, thank you for any of that stuff. If you'd like to follow me online and check out the work I do, you can find me at Mikah Sargent or head to chihuahua.coffee. That's CHIHUAHUA.coffee, where I've got links to many of the places I exist online. You should also check out The Tech Guy, which I record with Leo Laporte on Saturdays. That's our radio show where folks call in with their questions and we answer them, as well as iOS Today, which I record on Tuesdays with Rosemary Orchard, which is all things iOS and related topics. Jason Howell, what about you?
Well, you can just find me on Twitter, at Jason Howell. I'm also doing shows here on Twit, of course, all about Android, twit.tv/AAA. Got a great year coming up for All About Android with some interesting changes, so look forward to that. And then, yeah, just helping out on a lot of other shows every once in a while. Pop in on This Week in Google, help him produce Leo's big show, This Week in Tech. Keep him pretty darn busy around here. But I want to give a huge thank you to the folks who help us do this show each and every week, yes, but also each and every year. John Ashley, John Slanina, Burke McQuinn, everyone behind the scenes who's helping us to prepare for this show and make it a possibility and bring it out to you all. Thank you. We could not do it without you. And of course, we could not do it without you for watching and listening. You are the reason we create this show. So thank you for continuing to come back week after week. Y'all have yourself a fantastic New Year celebration, and we will see you in 2022. Thanks for watching Tech News Weekly. We'll see you next time.
Goodbye. Happy New Year.